5 World Hot News You Should Know from June 4 to June 6 of 2021. Welcome to Viet US 1040 channel, the world's hot news. Today we would like to share 5 world hot news that you should know from June 4 to June 6 of 2021 as follows. Newsletter 1. South Korea wants to force women into the army and the controversy over it. Newsletter 2. Major airlines urge the U.S. to ease travel restrictions. Newsletter 3. Vaccine against COVID-19 for the world. Great demand is not simple to fulfill. Newsletter 4. Shocked with news that the number of community-contaminated COVID-19 cases in Taiwan increased by nearly 10,000% in a month. Newsletter 5. An American Delta Airlines plane had to be diverted due to a disruptive passenger. The following are the details of the newsletters. Newsletter 1. South Korea wants to force women into the army and the controversy over it. It is now hot news that there has been a lot of controversy emerging in Korea around the issue of compulsory military service for women to cope with a decline in the number of soldiers. To maintain combat readiness, South Korea has one of the longest conscription regimes in the world. However, South Korea is facing a big challenge. The number of people eligible to enlist in the country is on a rapid decline. Why? First of all, it is related to Korea's lowest birth rate in the world. According to estimates by the Korean military, in 2022, the number of soldiers in this country will be reduced by 1/6 compared to 2021. And in the next 20 years, the number of soldiers in the army could be half of what it is today. Faced with this situation, who is aspiring to run for the next South Korean presidency, Mr. Park Young-jin, proposed compulsory military service for all young citizens, including both men and women. The proposal is controversial about the future of South Korea's military and the role of women in the armed forces and in Korean society. Mr. Park Young-jin proposed compulsory military service for women to promote gender equality. However, Chun Yoon-ae, Minister of Gender Equality and Family, thinks this line of reasoning is problematic. The debate about compulsory military service for women does not come from the goal of gender equality but from voices demanding that women go through the same disadvantages as men, Chun said. Observers say the proposal could be part of Park's strategy in a country where changing military service rules could provide a political advantage. Earlier, President Moon Jae-in appealed to young male voters during the 2017 election campaign by pledging to reduce mandatory service time in the military. On the other hand, it is said that the idea of amending the requirements for military service has won the attention of many people after Mr. Park wrote in a book called Political Revolution. It should be known that this country has about 550,000 active duty troops and 2.7 million reserve troops. However, that number has shrunk in recent years due to the alarmingly low birth rate. The country's population declines for the first time in 2020 after the birth rate fell to an all-time low of 0.84. To maintain its population at its current rate, South Korea will need to raise this ratio to 2.1. In response to the shrinking number of soldiers, the Seoul military plans to promote the use of high-tech equipment such as drones and increase the recruitment of women. However, before the comments about requiring women to join the army, the military said that the issue should be decided after comprehensive consideration and consensus of the public. Newsletter 2. Major airlines urge the U.S. to ease travel restrictions. Recently, it has been hot news that major U.S. airlines are calling on the U.S. government to quickly make a decision to ease restrictions against the COVID-19 epidemic that banned passengers in most European countries and other places authorized entry into the U.S. Previously on May 11, the CEOs of airlines called for a high-level meeting between U.S., UK and airlines officials to discuss the rapid reopening of transatlantic travel. Now it is reported that on June 7, leaders of some major airlines as well as chief executives, CEOs of Heathrow Airport, UK, and airlines of the American Travel Association will hold a meeting. Online press conference to promote the removal of travel restrictions between the US and the UK. It should be known that since March 2020, the US has banned almost all non-US passengers who have been in the UK within the last 14 days from entering this country. Most US visitors to the UK must self-isolate for 10 days from arrival. Previously, aviation authorities had hoped that by the end of May, the US would lift travel restrictions for the United Kingdom and Ireland, where the number of new COVID-19 cases had plummeted during recent times. The measures also apply to most non-US citizens in Brazil, South Africa, India and Iran. It is expected that from June 9, France will receive American citizens who have been vaccinated against COVID-19. United Airlines announced it would resume flights from Washington to Paris next July, while Delta Airlines said it would add flights to France. Newsletter 3. Vaccine against COVID-19 for the world. Great demand is not simple to fulfill. International experts say 70% of the global population needs to be vaccinated against COVID-19. That is the estimated number for the world to achieve herd immunity. However, to distribute about 5.5 billion doses of vaccine to the world is not easy at all. It is said that scientists have repeatedly affirmed that vaccines are an important and necessary weapon to prevent this dangerous disease that has paralyzed this world. Therefore, trying to get the vaccine to have wide coverage is an urgent task right now. However, the world is having problems with access to vaccines. Specifically, more than 600 million people have been vaccinated with at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, but at the same time, more than 7 billion people are still unvaccinated. Global statistics show that half of the vaccine doses in the world today are concentrated in developed countries, mainly the US and Europe, accounting for 1/7 of the world's population. Meanwhile, dozens of countries, especially in Africa, barely have enough vaccines to launch their vaccination campaigns. Immunizing most of humanity for a short time is a huge task, never done before. According to experts, this is also a task that the world is not ready to take on. On the other hand, it should be known that in the world today, there are only a few factories that can produce vaccines, and the trained human resources to make vaccines are also limited. Before the pandemic broke out, these scientists were also very busy creating vaccines to protect public health. Similarly, the production capacity of biological materials, cell culture media, specialized filters, pumps, pipes, preservatives, is also limited. Moreover, not stopping there, COVID-19 vaccines are mostly vaccines developed based on mRNA or vector technology. Until last year, this vaccine development technology had never been used in mass production. It requires different equipment, materials, techniques and expertise than other digestible vaccines. That is also part of the reason why AstraZeneca has repeatedly failed to fulfill orders for the European Union, EU. Besides, the successful development of several effective vaccines against COVID-19 in less than a year is truly a miracle of mankind. However, because of that, the contrast between rich and poor countries is more clearly depicted. Developed countries with abundant resources will buy a huge amount of vaccines to focus on vaccinating their own citizens, leading to a lack of supply for less developed countries. The issue of vaccine nationalism has been a concern of the world since the development of vaccines against COVID-19 was still in its infancy. Scientists say that if it is estimated that the number of vaccines produced and distributed in the first 6 months of 2021 is 2 billion doses and the last 6 months of 2021 are doubled, the whole world will have about 6 billion doses in 2021 just to meet the demand. More than 55% of the forecasted demand, which is enough for 39% of the world's population. Therefore, to be able to vaccinate 70% of the population by the end of 2021 is really a difficult problem to solve. Newsletter 4. Shocked with news that the number of community-contaminated COVID-19 cases in Taiwan increased by nearly 10,000% in a month. The latest news is that Taiwan is experiencing a serious wave of COVID-19 infections as the number of community infections in the island increased by nearly 10,000% in the past month. According to the island's health authority chief Chen Shicheng, the total number of COVID-19 cases in Taiwan is now 10,446. Taiwan's epidemiological agency, CECC, on June 4 recorded an additional 474 cases of COVID-19, bringing the total number of cases to over 10,000. In the past 1 month, the total number of COVID-19 cases in the island increased by 805%, while the number of community infections increased by 9,738%. On June 4, the island recorded 21 deaths from COVID-19, equal to the record set on May 29. In total, the island now has 187 deaths from the disease. Currently, in the face of an increasingly complicated disease wave, Taiwan is actively sourcing vaccines, and it has called for support from both vaccine manufacturers and the US. However, the island is still struggling to buy a vaccine against COVID-19. It was reported that last month, China offered to provide an emergency supply of a COVID-19 vaccine to help Taiwan cope with the epidemic, but the island flatly refused it. On May 26, Taiwan's leader Tsai Ing-wen accused Beijing of interfering to prevent the island from buying a COVID-19 vaccine from German pharmaceutical company BioNTech. However, in the latest development, Japan announced that it had shipped more than 1.2 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to Taiwan, a move that could make Beijing unhappy. China considers Taiwan a territory that must be reunified at all costs, including by force. Newsletter 5. An American Delta Airlines plane had to be diverted due to a disruptive passenger. U.S. authorities said on June 4 that they had arrested a passenger on a Delta Airlines flight from Los Angeles to Nashville because he intentionally entered the cockpit of the plane. According to Delta Airlines, the crew and passengers on Flight 386 were able to control the disruptive passenger while the plane was en route from Los Angeles International Airport, California to Nashville International Airport, in the state of Tennessee. The local TV channel showed a video taken on the plane showing a man tied but repeatedly saying, "Stop the plane." The incident caused the plane to be diverted to Albuquerque, New Mexico. However, the plane landed safely and law enforcement officers removed the man from the plane. At the time of the incident, there were 162 passengers and 6 crew members on the flight. No one was injured in the incident. Details say that the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, is investigating the case. This video here is the end. Thank you for your follow-up attention. If you find that the channel's video is useful, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and support the channel. Thank you very much, and see you again in the next channel video.